Now, this was a Suicide Squad movie. No one is safe. Anyone and everyone can die. Do not expect anyone to live. Your expectations will be crushed. And as someone who has actually been reading Suicide Squad since the mid 2000s, like around 2005, 2006, believe me when I say, this was a Suicide Squad movie, much more than the previous one. Although at the same time, it's not like there's any definitive way to do a Suicide Squad movie. It can go in either direction, and you've basically seen both directions it can go in. And while at a certain token, this movie is very derivative of the first one and comes down to a very similar plot structure to a certain degree. That really is the Suicide Squad's MO. They go in on a mission, certain things go awry, a greater majority of the squad ends up dead, they end up coming upon what their mission is all about, find out it wasn't what they were told in some way, shape, or form, more people die, they save something but not in the way that real heroes would, and boom, end of the day. Our quote-unquote heroes aren't happy, and usually neither is Waller to some degree. And while that really does make for a solid showing, a solid movie overall, my feelings on that is kind of complex. Because that direction for the Suicide Squad has never really been my all-time favorite, more or less. And that's mostly in the fact that so many of the squad ends up dead at the end of the day. I know. That's literally the title. It's a suicide mission. Most of them aren't expected to come out alive. But I always did appreciate it when a core cast of the characters you could at least expect to make it out alive for the most part. Yeah, you could have your fodder and all that. That's the nature of the game. But once you get to a certain amount of characters you actually enjoyed biting the big one, you start to kind of detach a little bit, and that was always my issue with the Suicide Squad in general. After a certain threshold of character deaths, I just kind of space out in terms of interest. It's just like, okay, so anyone can die, and you've kind of lost me. At least emotionally. I'm still interested in the plot for the most part. And the only downside to the plot here is that it feels like it kind of meanders a little bit towards the center. It has a solid opening, and the ending set piece is really fun for the most part. It's just in that middle ground where things are transitioning between the two as they're infiltrating Corto Maltese and you're starting to understand the scope of the plot and all that. That's around the point where I'm just like, okay, how are we getting to the end of all of this? And for a movie that is well over 2 hours long, it just was not hitting the way I felt that it should have. Viola Davis's Amanda Waller was at her most Amanda Waller possible. Like, seriously, spot on casting with that character, because she really does play the role super well. Idris Elba as Bloodsport, an okay enough character. Despite the fact that he's brought into the comics from time to time, he's not that notable of a character, and while Idris Elba does play him very well for the most part, and his weaponry is fascinating if nothing else in the way that it works, it's ultimately not as memorable as, well, Will Smith's Deadshot for the most part. John Cena as Peacemaker is very spot on for Peacemaker for the most part. Although with that John Cena flair that you would expect. And honestly, the direction that the character goes in, if you know anything about Peacemaker, it's just like, yep, that tracks. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn is, honestly, she gets some really awesome scenes for the most part. And she still, to this day, plays her Harley Quinn the best way you could expect a live-action Harley Quinn for the most part. I know not a lot of people are really feeling that the animated versions of Harley Quinn do it a lot better, but ultimately, that's understandable because Harley Quinn was made for animation. And I feel that Margot Robbie gets it as close as possible. Rick Flag goes in some directions that I wasn't expecting for Rick Flag. And honestly, I feel like this movie kind of does that character dirty, but going off of the first movie, it's just kind of like, yeah, that tracks. Rick Flag is always going to get the shaft no matter what. The Polka Dot Man was as interesting as I thought he was going to be, and I'll leave it at that. It's just like some interesting avenues with the character, and it was a pretty memorable role, if nothing else. Ratcatcher 2 was pretty fun for the most part. The Ratcatcher has been a very reappearing character in terms of DC Comics every once in a while, fighting a member of the Bat family and all that. And this is probably the most interesting portrayal of the Ratcatcher out there. And there's some interesting cameos in the Ratcatcher's backstory that I definitely was not expecting. And there's a sense of sympathy that you give to the character. Definitely the heart of this movie. And the emotional center for a lot of these characters. And King Shark is a shark. I feel like that's a Gail Simone joke. I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a shark, I'm a shark. But a fun character for the most part. Sylvester Stallone, knocked it out of the park. I don't know what it is about James Gunn and having these big CGI characters who say so little, but at the same time can just be a little bit endearing. Now, King Shark isn't as emotionally grabbing as Groot, but at the same time, it's a fun character, fun to interact with. After a certain point, you honestly stop thinking about the character as CG in certain scenes, and you just see them talking with King Shark. It's amazing when you just lose yourself in the moment and actually think they're just talking to a giant anthropomorphic shark. Well played, guys. Now, do I think this movie is gonna be memorable? No, not really. People are going to like it well enough, but I don't feel like this movie is going to break any new ground, bring in any new fans. Had this been the only Suicide Squad movie to come out, I'll be honest with you, it would have just come and gone quick as the wind. But literally because of the first Suicide Squad movie, it's elevated by proxy. And that's what I feel. This is a very standard movie for the most part, with a lot of fun and interesting flair thrown in there. That brings it just a little bit above average. But that's it. It's a little above average. And I feel like a lot of people are just going to give it a lot more credit than it actually deserves because of the fiasco of the first movie. That isn't me shitting on this movie by any means. It's a fun popcorn flick that you can watch with your friends and have an altogether good time. But is this a movie I'm going to revisit multiple times going forward? No. Not unless I have, again, a whole bunch of friends around and we're just like, oh, why not watch Suicide Squad? So and so hasn't seen it, and it wouldn't be bad to just watch it again for the hell of it. And that's about it. It's a movie made and done up just for the hell of it. And it's a pretty good hell of a good time. But don't just listen to me ramble. Have you watched Suicide Squad? What were your thoughts? Who was your favorite character? What death shocked you the most? And I didn't even get into Starro because, that's pretty much spoiled from the trailer. And Starro was spot on. Literally, if the Suicide Squad were to go up against Starro, that's exactly how I think it would go down at the end of the day. It is the most on-brand thing possible. But again, comment section below if you like this video. Like, comment, subscribe, bell, all that good stuff, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.